Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Profiles in Risk. On a late Friday afternoon, I have my good friend, Bryan Falchuk. Bryan, welcome back.
What's going on, Nick? Thanks for having me on again.
Well, no better way to end a Friday than for us to catch up. We haven't talked in a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. Well, I talked to you. You didn't talk to me. I was chasing you at ITC, but it was too busy. And
Well,
and my team was laughing at me. They're like, "That guy's not even turning around to say hi." I was like, "All right,
where,
I'll catch you later."
where was this?
It was like heading towards the registration area. It was like the last day. We had packed up. I had my hands full of stuff, so I couldn't really move fast enough. And anyway, I made a little bit of a scene, but probably not enough.
Shame on me.
It's fine.
It was a zoo.
It's crazy.
So
Yeah.
let's catch up then. Let's find out what you've been up to. Last time we talked was at Connected Claims
Yeah.
way back in the summer.
Yeah.
You are with Hi Marley.
I am. My
What's going on?
my title might have changed since then, but I'm still kind of doing the same thing. So I'm responsible for all of our growth, so our marketing and our sales. And it basically, for those who didn't hear me when I was still at a carrier when I was on the show a while ago, I'm P&C guy, 20 years. I was running claims for Hiscox USA and heard about this little startup that wasn't actually started up yet that was going to do texting and claims. And I was like, it's a terrible idea. I don't text. It sounds silly. And then I told my team the next morning and they're like, what's wrong with you? Like we could use this. And so then I was like, okay, well, let's give it a shot. And I was blown away.
Really?
Yeah, it's just, it's kind of funny. I think whenever I tell the story to people, they think I'm just trying to sell them. But genuinely, like first 2 hours of our pilot at Hiscox, we got a claim in. The woman texted in. It was about a theft. So there was a break into her business, like glass door. Guy smashed the door, took an iPad. It was like an iPad built into one of those Square payments terminals and an iMac, took him off the countertop in her business and left. So she texts in a little, narrative, but then we get like photos of the police report, photos of all the broken glass, the receipts from
Mm-hmm.
the equipment, and then she texts in video from her surveillance camera. So we actually watched the break-in happen. And this is like within the first 2 hours of the pilot. And so we're sitting there and the adjuster like calls everyone over and he's like, check this out. And he's like, what do I do? We're like, what do you mean? What do you do? He's like, do I send out someone in the field to go look at what do I do? And we're like, oh yeah, we would always have done that in the past. And they're going to see less than we've seen. Like we've actually watched the robbery in progress. Not in real time. We would have something if we did, but
yeah.
And that was just kind of this like wake up moment. Like how much are we missing? How much time are we losing when we could just get it done? Because the thing is, like, everyone can text. People do it sitting in a meeting when they shouldn't, but they do. I was just at a carrier yesterday and they're like, we had a doctor who went through a claim and he's like, I don't have time to talk to you during the day, but I can text you. I can't like be on the phone. I need to see my patients. And that's, it sort of hit us. So that business owner actually texted, we do a little survey at Hi Marlene. So we gave her the survey. She's like, 5 stars. I've been so tied up with everything in the robbery, I wouldn't have called you back for like a week. So we're like, okay, we got this claim handled in a couple of hours. We wouldn't even have made first contact for 5 business days, or, I don't know what she meant by a week, if it was 7 days or 5 business days. Regardless, like that was this huge wake up for us. And for me, kind of, okay, I need to get with the times. I'm clearly older than I think I am,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm using that as an excuse, but like the world texts now. Actually, so it's Friday afternoon. I just was putting them into the spam filter on my phone. I've gotten 17 calls since lunch that were all fake. So, like phone calls we can't talk on the phone. And when we get calls, they're fake. So people are not engaging by phone anymore. And so
Yeah,
claims suck for no reason.
I won't answer if I don't recognize the phone number.
Yeah. Well, I just got one that they actually spoofed the caller ID. So Apple supposedly just called me to tell me that my iCloud got hacked. And apparently like that's a thing going on today. So I Googled that and found out it's not real, which I didn't think it would be anyway. They're not the kind to have robocallers telling people that, but I'm sure some people are falling for it. So yeah, people won't answer their phone or they're too busy. And so it's like, we're going to play phone tag forever, frustrating everybody instead of actually just moving this claim through to resolution or this policy. I mean, think about, like interacting with your agent or as an underwriter with an agent or broker. If you're not one of the first 3 quotes back, you're probably not going to win, even if you're a better coverage at a better price, because they got to move forward. And, if you're waiting for them to answer questions or they're trying to get in touch with you, that's time ticking that your competitors are getting their responses in. So it's like, well, what if we could just text and get this resolved? So, it started to open my eyes up. And so I ended up joining the company last February. And it's been going crazy since then. So when we did a little video at Connected Claims, I thought we had a great solution. Since then, we've come out with 2 other major releases. We've got a ton more features. We got over 20 carriers that we're working with right now. I wish I could say it on this call, but we don't have their marketing department's blessing yet. But we've got one of the majors is literally just signed like the other day. So no, that's pretty exciting. It's been great. Like it's been going really well, and that's huge.
So couple things. We'll talk about the new features, but talk about what it was like to transition from head of claims for a fairly large entity. So we're talking London-based, the formality of of how things are supposed to get done to startup.
Yeah, and well, I would say I weaned myself off of that. So like I started my career at Liberty Mutual, which is a very different Liberty Mutual than it is today, but much more traditional old school carrier, and Liberty's wildly different than it was back. I was like 12 billion when I joined, and now it's around 40. So, markedly different place. But every successive carrier I went to, I did Liberty, I went to business school, I worked at McKinsey and served carriers, and they were similar to Liberty. They're really big carriers who could afford McKinsey, basically. So similar kind of stuff. And then I found out about specialists, and I went to a carrier called Beasley, who most people, if they know Beasley, they know them for their cyber products. And this was before cyber was a product. So I was there, through the development of that. And it was just really cool. It was like, wait, you can be innovative and entrepreneurial. And we sat in an open floor plan. And so I started to get a taste of more of that kind of free, collaborative environment. I've been working with the startup for a while now, not Hi Marley, another one called Guard Hat. So I got a little bit of a taste firsthand of the startup world as an advisor to them. And then I go to Hiscox, which is a lot like Beasley in that respect, like bringing the open floor plan. It's kind of inspired by Lloyd's. For anyone who hasn't been to Lloyd's, they call them the box. It's a table. It's all open.
Box. Yeah, it's a wooden box,
and they put you inside it and they lock it. And but it's like the underwriters are sitting at a table and the brokers line up to meet with them, and they talk about risks. And the other underwriters pitch in, and sometimes the claims people will be there, and it's very collaborative. So you transport that into the U.S. and you add a little bit of the tech flair, where we've got Silicon Valley and I forget what we call 128 here. It's got some catchy name, but the 128 corridor, that doesn't sound very techy. No. There's lots of startups in Boston.
Yes, there is.
And so you get, like a cool vibe, an open floor plan, a lot of collaboration. And that's what I got at Hiscox. So I would be making a better story to be like, oh, drab insurance company. That's not Hiscox. Hiscox is amazing. Incredible culture, incredible company, really collaborative. My team, I've been really lucky in my career. I've worked with incredibly smart people. My team at Hiscox to this day still blows me away for not just their intelligence, but their culture. I love that claims team at Hiscox. I'm going to start getting mushy, so let's just stop. But so that, like, to go from that to this wasn't that stark. But it is different, like the founders are leading the company, which is amazing. And it also means the founders are still, like they have that vision, and there's a bit of founders women there. And so sometimes, if you're used to having a very prescribed path and heading down that, because that's the strategy for this year, you better not be working at a startup, because it's not going to work that way.
Yeah.
Like we'd stop existing, because you have to pivot. You have to be able to dream, and you have to be able to push the envelope. And for some people, that's really unsettling, including me at times. Like I'll be off meeting with a bunch of carriers on the road and I come back and we're talking about something. I'm like, wait, didn't we say the opposite on Monday? It's like, oh yeah, well, this happened. And so we thought about it differently. And so now we want to do this. It's like, okay, I get it. But I missed all the in between. So you have to be ready for that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm constantly apologizing for whiplashing people. Like I know I told you on Monday the most important thing in the world is
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
but now that it's Tuesday, the most important thing in the world is something else.
Yeah.
You do have to get comfortable in that. It's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah. And, at a larger, more traditional company, the speed of those decisions is much more drawn out. So the chance that you've missed the decision making is a lot slimmer, or you missed the chance to opine on it. Startups can afford that. Like, for me to say I joined in February and it hasn't been a year, I'm like, how has it not been a year yet? And it's not to say like it's dragging on. It's like we've done so much. I've created so much, been a part of so much, produced so much. Um, I was just looking back on the number of carriers that I've been to in person. It's wild. Like there's parts of the country I've never seen before. And I was a traveling consultant, like I should have seen it. So to have achieved all that in, I can't do the math right now. Was that like 8 months?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty hard to believe. So yeah, it's been flying by, and that's like when I reflect on what we've done even since Connected Claims, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's a cool place to be.
So it there's almost like no better validation. I think that's the right word of the product of for Hi Marley. In that one, you were a customer of that product.
Yeah.
And and decided you wanted to join. It must be like a validation of what's there. Like, how would you compare and contrast that particular solution to all of the others or none of the others that were proposed to you
Yeah.
when you were at Hiscox?
Yeah.
Because that's a big step, right? That is one thing to be. It's a big step to be a customer. Even bigger step to say, I so believe in what you're doing that I would like to join you and leave the security of this lifestyle for the hecticness of this one. Talk about the product itself and why it just rings a bell.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is I made the call as a customer in 2017, which was really early. So like we've been talking about internally that it was sort of around Connected Claims in June where we stopped having to convince people that texting is a thing they should be thinking about, that customers want it and they need to do it. Like we had to sell people on the idea that this is even relevant. So go back to 2017. I mean, I said I didn't even think it was important or necessary. Luckily, my team was smarter, so they saw it. But this is really early days. Like no one was thinking about that, or if they were, it was like, oh, that's for personal auto. Like we're doing specialty line, we're doing GL and E&O and BOP and cyber, and like, is your CFO gonna text like the FBI is outside my door? What do I do? Claims adjuster, help me. Probably not. But I don't know. In 3 years, they might. I mean, hopefully they're not in that situation, but they might. So it was really early and awkward, and I think a lot of people were skeptical of it then. But yeah, for me to flip that switch and leave, it is really validating. It does resonate when I talk to people about it. And I think the reasons why I felt comfortable becoming a customer and the reasons why philosophically I was comfortable joining. And for people who heard me last time on the show, like I am super values driven. That's kind of all that matters to me. This is that kind of like the CEO, Mike, talks about love a lot and people laugh, but he genuinely means it. He wants to make insurance lovable. And that's not just a catchy slogan. Like he says that almost every day. So for me, it's like, yeah, that's important, but actually I got to live with the regulations and I got to live with documenting things and coverage litigation and DOIs and transferring files and having multiple adjusters on the same case and all these things that are just kind of the day-to-day of life at a carrier. And there's a lot of ways you can text customers. There basically is nothing that is purpose-built for insurance that cares for all of those issues. So, and that actually blows my mind because they're not, I should be really careful how I talk about this so that I don't give anyone ideas. I was going to say they're not tough things to think about, but for some reason they are for people outside the industry. So like we go head to head against this one company, and I'm talking through some of the functionality that for me is just table stakes. Like as a carrier, if the system can't create a transcript, can't have multiple adjusters talking to the customer at once, can't allow you to reassign a case to someone else, because like claims get reassigned all the time. But if you can't do that, that means you're stopping the conversation and then someone else is reaching out separately, which is how it's always been. And it's not working for customers. They don't like that. They don't like the handoff. And they're like, oh, I got to start from scratch now.
I already told the story.
It's miserable. Yeah. And it's like, this is the worst moment of my life. And now you're making me go through your process. That is the wrong answer. And this one particular competitor, their response, like when I shared that with it was this person in procurement at a carrier, and she was like, oh, they told us we don't need to worry about that. And it's like, they told you don't. Okay, do you transfer claims to different people? Like, oh yeah, every day. Probably 20% of our claims get reassigned over their lifetime. Like, okay, you can't do that with their system. I was like, do you guys ever have coverage litigation, or do the DOIs or Better Business Bureau ever come in on a case, or do you ever do internal audits? Or quality audits? And she's like, yeah, every day. And it's like, okay, well, your people are going to have to screenshot or copy and paste out of that texting solution into your core claim system, because you won't have any record of the text conversation in your core system. Like that's kind of an issue. And it's something people hate to do. Like they hate moving the emails into the core system.
Of course. Yeah.
One of the carriers we're talking to, when they saw the demo, they're like, oh, okay, we have an office, we gave everyone cell phones, and Friday at 2:00, we make them stop handling claims because that's their screenshot time. So they have to go through all the text for the week and like screenshot, swipe, screenshot, swipe. Like, I mean, think about like how many times, and then upload all those images and annotate them.
And the mistakes that go along with doing something like that.
Yeah, you can't do that. And the problem is it's discoverable. So if you're in coverage litigation and opposing counsel is like, oh, well, I want to see the chat, your text transcript. And you're like, oh, sure. Well, guess what? You have to actually hand over the person's phone. Like if your employees use their personal phone, which a lot of adjusters are doing, we've come to find out, their phone is now admissible in court. Or if you can't produce a transcript, then your entire communication platform is admissible in court. And I promise you don't want opposing counsel going through all of your text messages or the DOI doing that. It's little things like this that it's like, if you don't live in this space, I don't think you get it. And so we are 100%, everyone comes from insurance. It's like, our engineers don't. They come from engineering and they're really good at that. But like, me and another guy named Bryan with a Y, it's like the only other one in the world. We're the sales team. He was a broker. One of our customer success managers, Kayla, she was at Marsh. Tess, another one of our partnership person, she was at Marsh. And then we've got people like our founders were all, they were serving insurance companies looking at claims leakage and customer experience. And that's where they got the idea for Hi Marley. They're like, we're seeing all this leakage. We're seeing these outcomes and upset customers. And we're seeing consistent theme that communication's bottlenecked. Well, what if we could change that? Like then there isn't as much leakage to clean up. And that's actually what we've seen is, and this is the hard thing to believe for a lot of people, the numbers are much bigger than what we publish, but most people wouldn't believe them except for the carriers that they come from. We've seen severity come down. We've seen the claim cycle time drop pretty significantly, like by over a fifth, which is wild. Publicly, we talk about 4+% lower claims cost. And I always say, like, if my CEO called me and was like, Bryan, you got to cut our losses by 4%, I'd be like, well, I have no idea what to do. You want me to just stop paying 4% of our claims? Like, I have no clue legally how to do that. And I certainly would have been like, oh, I'll just send text to the customers. Like that would not have occurred to me. So it's pretty, and the reality is it's actually quite a bit higher on average. 4% is the bottom of the range. Less phone tag, like 4 fewer calls per claims. We have one carrier in 3 weeks of a pilot with us paid for an entire year on the platform just on call volume. It's wild.
It's amazing. Yeah. And your first story, the amount of economic savings without having, if you can close a claim without sending somebody there.
Yeah.
travel costs and man hours
Yeah.
to be able to do all of
Well,
that.
and the customer hates it. Then it's
Yeah,
like, okay, my business has already been impacted. Can I just get on with my life?
yeah. Now I got to
Now,
chaperone this person around my
right,
store and go through the
right. And
whole
you
story
worry,
again.
like, oh, are they going to see something that they shouldn't
Yeah,
see, or are they
yeah,
not going to get the severity of this? And then I'm going to get screwed. And what it does is it feeds that adversarial expectation that your
yes,
insurance
yeah,
company's not here for you.
yeah,
And that's actually the biggest piece of it, Nick, is it's customer experience. And so, I mentioned the survey. We do this little 5-star survey in the back. Like, it's not like a full-fledged deep, a lot of carriers are like, oh, we send out these 20-question surveys that get really deep. We don't want to duplicate efforts. Like, this is different. It's like a little conversational, kind of conversational read on how things are going. And it's 1 to 5 stars. What people are doing on Yelp and Uber, and they're used to it, and they're, done and dusted really quickly. Um, Carriers on our platform are averaging a 4.7 out of 5 stars for customer sat. Go on to ClearAssurance, go to Google, look at the insurance industry. The best of the best are in the low 4s on ClearAssurance, or like mid 4s maybe. But you go on Google and it's like a 2 something is a good outcome for a carrier on Google.
yeah.
We have a carrier who day one in their pilot, they were at a 4.3 and they were nervous. They were like, are you going to let us stay on the platform? Like, you're fine. It's okay. There's one customer who gave them a 3 out of 5 who's like, I've never done this before. I don't know. Like, okay, well, maybe that's not a fair for
How do you,
3. Like,
how do you use this text thing?
yeah. Well, no,
Get
so
get off my lawn.
another carrier had an 80-year-old woman who's never texted with anybody before. Her first text was with her insurer, which I don't think anyone ever saw coming. She even sent photos. We're very proud of her.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's it's fantastic. Let me ask you from a personal standpoint. It must be extreme. I'm trying to think of from the sales perspective when you're
Yeah.
sitting across there. Your background must come in handy.
It does. And I know a lot of the people that I'm sitting across from, or I knew their predecessor. So we were just at a carrier, and I, was at not the last chief claims officer summit, the one before that with the guy who retired, who he replaced. So yeah, I know a lot of the folks, but it's also, I'm not a sales guy. As much as I may sound like one on this call, it's just because I'm really passionate about this because I believe in it. But I'm not a salesperson. I never have been. I'm not talking to you about the value or like if we can do a deal today, blah blah blah. Like, that's not me.
Yeah, but
I'm talking
it
about
is.
life. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
sat with
also,
this too.
it's like the one of the stories that you told. You're sitting across from a carrier, and the carrier's like, "Well, we were told we didn't need to worry about this,"
Yeah,
and you're just like, "What? Like,
yeah,
how can they get away with that?" And
yeah.
that must be, from a sales perspective, that's incredibly valuable in the discovery
Sure.
part of trying to basically tie all the pieces together to show them. From our experience and from my personal experience being in claims and having this background, we think these are the things you really need to worry about,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
getting their mindset to focus on that so that they can basically compare High Marley with the other options in the proper light and not just who had the best pitch and
yeah.
who had the best tie on or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't wear a tie. Yeah, no, completely. And that's where it is really valuable. I mean, even just an implementation call. Our customer success folks were leading it, but I was involved in the relationship, so I was there. And they were asking for something, and I was like, how do you guys do this part of your process? Because I think if you think about it this way, you might end up like this, and if you think about it this
Yeah,
way, then and this is why we built it. Like, oh, we didn't even think of that. So just
exactly.
adding that firsthand, and like I had to implement the thing myself, not just like on the provider side, but like I had to have my team learn how to use it and sit with it and make sure it works, and all those kinds of things. Like, I've been there too, and that it's definitely helpful. I always say, like, I think being able to sit in your customer's shoes is probably the most valuable sales tool you can have. And for me, um, it's been several months now, but I try to keep myself aligned to that position as almost like I'm an advocate for what your life looks like and thinking about how it can be better with this tool. And frankly, like, your customers, yours, but your people too. And this is, we do work outside of claims, but claims specifically is such a hard space to work in. You think about it, like you spend your day listening to bad things happening to people. And there's tons of research that when you hear lots of negative stuff, it makes you feel bad. Like it's that sentiment is contagious, good or bad, but you're listening to the worst that's happened to people. Quite often their presumption is you're there to screw them over, not stand by them. And that comes from lots of different places. I'm not going to go off on health insurers, but most people's common interaction with insurance is health, and health insurance tends to be a lot more difficult, a lot more no's than P&C. But the presumption on the consumer's part is like, you're just going to tell me no. So that doesn't help. And then people don't take the time to stop and say thank you, especially when communication is as difficult as it is to begin with. Like, how are they going to reach out and tell you? They can't even get on the phone to receive payment for their loss. So all of a sudden, like I call it a goalie job, goalkeeper job. Is CIO at Beasley's the one who gave me that idea. It's like, he's like, the service desk is a goalkeeper. They only hear when something's gone wrong. Like they only hear when the ball goes in the net. They never hear about all the saves.
Yeah.
And that's claims. Like you're saving so many goals on a regular basis, but no one says thank you for that. And so like, it's all negative. People are adversarial when you're just trying to help, and no one's stopping to say thank you. So what if we made it easier? What if we took away the adversarialness? Because you see in the text, people aren't adversarial. Like they're sending heart and smiley emojis. Just like, who send heart emojis to their insurance carrier? But people are doing it. And then they're given the 5 stars and they're naming the adjusters specifically. We just had one Thursday of last week. An adjuster literally was in tears. And that may sound ridiculous to people, but I mentioned Kayla on our team. Like she's the one who told the rep, because the rep wasn't checking her customer sat. She's like, oh, you've got perfect 5-star. Let's check it out. And she clicked on it, and the rep saw the first feedback from one of the customers, and she remembered the claim, and she literally is like fighting back tears because no one thanks her. She's been at the job for 30 years. She's not used to being thanked for doing that. She put that person's life back together. Like that's a pretty profound kind of praise.
Yeah.
So to oversee a team that's getting that instead of getting beaten down, ultimately, I think that really appeals to a CCO, at least in my view. Yeah.
No, that's a fantastic story. Where are you going to be in the next few weeks?
I don't know. I'm going to be in parts of Michigan for a little while. I know that. I should actually reach out to Rob Galbraith, see if I can be more interesting by being in his presence. I got to go to Lansing one day.
You have the same haircut now.
I do. Yeah. Yeah, I keep forgetting that I just shaved my head, and so I'll walk by a mirror and kind of be like, "Whoa,
who the hell's that?"
Yeah. I do that like Kramer stutter stop kind of shape. So I know I've got that. I've been in Columbus a lot, but never when Tony's there. So although we did meet up in the airport once, in the Columbus airport.
He's moving,
I know he's moving back.
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, you won't be there to peek into his apartment.
Yeah, it's sort of peeking over to his apartment, not in. Yeah. It's creepy.
It's creepy. Hey, Tony, I can see you.
I brought him eggs once.
Because you saw inside his refrigerator?
Well, yeah, someone had stayed over, and they had eggs. It was during the hymn storms. One of my employees from Miami was stuck in Atlanta, and there were no hotel rooms, and I was out of town. So my assistant let her into my apartment, and because I had an apartment down there, I wasn't living there full time. I didn't have employees staying with me. It's a weird story, I'll admit that. But I come back, and there's like 2 bottles of Gatorade and a package of eggs, and I'm vegan. So I'm like, what am I going to do with eggs? I brought the Gatorade into the office, but I'm not going to like bring in raw eggs for everyone and be like, hey, anybody want an egg? So I was like, Tony, do you guys want some eggs? So yeah, the creepiness just continued.
Yes, that's fantastic.
And of course, he didn't cook, so I don't know that the eggs actually got used.
Oh well, we'll have to make a little note.
Yeah.
See, we'll find out about that. Maybe they're still in Atlanta.
They could be.
So on a personal note,
yes,
I'm checking out your studio there with the awesome microphone and all of the poster backdrops. What's going on your side?
Yeah, so the other part of my life, other than my family, is the stuff behind me is my first book, Do a Day, and my podcast, also called Do a Day. It's all about helping people change their lives. You guys were kind enough to bring me on. That's when we first got to meet, and I first got
We,
to look through Tony's window.
I like to think that we jump started Do a Day. Like it was from there, it was like inflection point.
Let's
Yeah.
go with that. That's
Yeah.
certainly in the
Okay.
insurance space. We can definitely say that.
Okay. I'll take it.
Yeah. So Do a Day, it, has a little brother or sister coming. I don't know what gender it is. Um, but my second book is finally coming out, and I feel like I probably told you about it like a year and a half ago. I'm like, yeah, it'll be out like this year. So I did a TED Talk in August of 2018, and the book was coming out before the TED Talk, yet it is only just coming out now. So I was like, yeah, it's going to be out before the TED Talk, but it's coming out now, November 19th. It's called the 50, 75, 100 Solution, Build Better Relationships. And it's all about something we all have relationships that could be better, whether they're good or bad, they could always be better. And it's an approach to be able to do that. And I say I don't know if it's a boy or a girl because like it's too little paper. I don't know if you can. This is like the print proof. It's like paper dolls, but they're genderless. So I don't know what gender the book is, but Do a Day's got a little sibling, let's say.
So can you tell us what the book's about?
Yeah. So people hear the title and they're like, oh, math. But hopefully this audience is more okay with math than the non-actuarially inclined. So what it is about our role in any tough relationship, and us and someone else, whether it's us as a group versus another group or one-on-one, we have half of the problems. That's where the number 50 comes from. And within us, like if we each have half, us and them, we're also split in half again. So there's really 4 quarters to every relationship, and they're made up of our actions and reactions and the other person's actions and reactions. We own our half. We own our actions, like what we're actively choosing to put out in the world. And even though it may be hard, we do own our reactions. Like we can choose to react differently to other people. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying sometimes it feels impossible. The reality is like, no matter what, you can always turn the other cheek, not say something, smile, say thank you. So that's, that's how we respond to the stimulus of the world. And the thing is that's going on in them too. So they have what they're acting, choosing to put out in the world as their actions, and they have how they're reacting to us. And when you see that piece of it, that's where you get to the 75. So if we own our half, we actually can influence half of them because half of them comes from how they're responding to us. So that means you have control or influence over 3 quarters of any tough relationship. And what I found is when I talk to people about that, because I use this in my coaching and I've written about it before and I've done talks on it. And it's like people like, oh, I felt powerless in this. I felt controlless. I felt like, why don't they just change or just love me more or just see the good in me or just, whatever, all these why questions about the person doing things to them. And it was like, oh, I have more power. I have more agency in this situation than I realized. And that's really empowering. And if you can control or influence 3 quarters, you can affect change in the whole. And that's where the number 100 comes in. So those are 3 numbers, 50, 75, 100. It's about those quarters between the actions and the reactions. And then the way you do it is the key. Like it's great to know that, but okay, how? Like I get you, Bryan, but what do I do? And what I share is through my own struggles with relationships. I'm pretty candid about it. My wife is amazing, and it's all me. Let's just say that. Like all the problems are my fault, or that's certainly what she told me going in. And we're having a rough go of it, as a lot of people do, and this is not just romantic or spouse or significant other relationships. This is work. This is families. You're actually one of the people, Nick, who responded on social media with, I was calling out, I'm like, what are some other relationship situations people want to hear about? Because I was trying to see what examples to put in the book and really blow out into like case studies, to give some real examples. And you said adult sibling relationships. You may not remember that. And if it was, we're going to pretend you said it and just say you don't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was you. But you know what? Like those are amazing because, we all have our childhood dynamic and then we grow up. And the problem is now we're relating to each other differently, except those childhood dynamics are still there. And so it's like there's almost a third person in the relationship, or a fourth. There's these two children there. And are we accounting for that or not?
So that's really interesting, Brian. It actually reminds me of my high school reunion that occurred recently, and I couldn't help but notice that my classmates kind of reformed cliques. They laughed in the same way, they behaved in the same way, and even though I'm having conversations with them and we're adults, most of them were parents, some of them were grandparents. It was just I strange that I still felt like I couldn't open up in the way I wanted to open up. I couldn't have the conversation I really wanted to have, and part of that could have been just immaturity on my side, but I still felt like we were high school students, like what we, the issues that we were dragging with us, 20, 30 years ago, still exists, and I couldn't quite get over that.
So I told you it was a good one. There's a lot to that. I like my high school reunion. Every time I see these people, they're like, "Whoa, you lost a lot of weight." It's like, dude, I lost weight senior year. I haven't like my 10-year reunion. I was heavier than the last time they saw me. They're like, "Oh my god, what happened? You look amazing." Like, because I'm the fat kid in your eyes, because that's how you always knew me, even though the last time you knew me, I wasn't. We frame it. Um, so it's basically like, in all these relationships, there's three core principles that just in studying in my own hopes of changing my dynamic with my wife and doing the work on myself, that I started to learn about it. Started studying Buddhism. I was seeing was she a licensed like social worker, who's like talking to me about these principles, and she's like, you should check out this book. It's called Do a Day. It's the most amazing book. And no, she's like, you should read this book called Open Heart, Clear Mind. Yeah, just casually throw that in. Yeah, it's a quality book. The author's incredible. No, but so I'm gonna hold it up. It's called Open Heart, Clear Mind, and I'm gonna give you a link for the new book is 5075100.com, like the numbers. So 5075100.com. If you do 5075100.com/OHCM for Open Heart, Clear Mind, it'll take you through to the book on Amazon. It's people, when they ask me like, what's the best thing you've ever read? I think they all expect me to say my own book, which I would never do. And I don't think it is. I'm not sure most authors would say that, but I wouldn't. I would say it's this. And someone just gave me a book they say is their number one. So I have to read that and we'll see which wins. But this is either the or the second best thing I've ever read. It's incredible. And it really opened my eyes and opened my mind to a few different key things that started to change our dynamic. And I started to use in other situations where I was struggling with people. And I share those three core concepts: happiness seeking, interdependence, and impermanence. I share them in 50, 75, 100 as the mechanism you use to affect that change. Happiness seeking to me is it's a great starting point. It's probably the most powerful. It's just this idea that like no one actually just means to be bad to you. There's something that they want. You just may be standing in the way, or they may perceive you to be. So, I use this example, I use it too much, of getting cut off in traffic. And like most of us get riled up, especially in Boston, because it's part of who we are. And it's like that person did not get on the highway looking for your car to cut in front of you and make you one car later. They got on the highway to get where they're going. And like you, they're stuck in traffic and they're unhappy about it. And you just happen to be the one car, or the one car in that moment that they were like, if I just get in front of them, I'll be happier, or I'll be that much closer. And seeing it that way helps you feel less attacked. If you feel less attacked, that suddenly makes space to start reacting differently. Remember, it's like controlling your reactions. The easiest way to do that is to interpret them differently, but you got to see that the person's not just trying to hurt you. If my wife yells at me or puts me down, it's not because she hates me. It's not because she thinks I'm incompetent. It's because whatever happened in that moment triggered something in her that led her to feel like her happiness is being taken away. Now, whether that's fair or accurate isn't relevant right now. Like if I give this example of like stepping in to help with something because that's kind of who I am. For me, that's a really kind thing to do. And I'm trying to make her burden lighter and get her to a better place and take care of her or help or whatever. To her, that's a statement of you're saying I'm incompetent. You think I'm lazy. You think I'm too slow. You want things done your way. All of that is a threat to me and makes me feel less good about myself. And those are the narratives in our heads. Neither of them is what the other one sees. And I'm certainly not doing what I'm doing for those reasons that she's perceiving. And to her, I'm not doing them for the reasons I'm saying I am. But that then creates a clash. So we each have like my happiness is to help her out. Her happiness is to feel capable or loved or supported or whatever, and not judged. But we're standing in each other's way, or we're perceived to be. And so it leads to this much more negative interaction. So if I can put myself out of my spin on what I think is going on and try to see what she actually wants, like, oh, yeah, I'm trying to help her. She's not able to see that because she's feeling belittled or she's feeling stepped on. That's not a good feeling. Clearly, her happiness is not to feel belittled and stepped on. So I need to recognize that's why she's treating me the way she is, not because she hates me or she thinks I'm a terrible person. She just doesn't like the way I just stepped in the way of her happiness. Now maybe I can interact differently and I can recognize where she might interpret my actions a certain way, even though I didn't mean them that way. You can tell as I'm telling her, like, it's much more relaxing. Doesn't mean it feels good. Doesn't mean I like what's going on, but it certainly means I can handle the situation differently. And if you can do that, if I can give her a different version of me to react to, then I can start to change the dynamic. And that's interdependence is like no one is absolutely good or bad. We're good and bad in different situations with different people. I always say it's why bullies have friends. It's why, like, you ask one person out, they're like, you get away from me, never in a million years. You ask someone else out, they're like, oh my God, I love you. Of course. I was waiting for you to ask me, but you're the same person, right? No, it's different situations, different people. Or it's why, like, we fight with people we love dearly, you know? Um, Change the situation, you get a different interaction. And so if you can see their happiness and you can take the interaction differently, you give them something different to react to. Now you're changing the dynamic. The impermanence idea is that everything changes. So that gives us hope that if we change the dynamic, we actually can affect change. It might take some time, but ultimately we can get that relationship to a better place if we just keep stepping back, trying to think about what the happiness goals are that we both have, and using that to drive a different interaction. So it's this really it's a really beautiful way of seeing the pain we all carry and trying to use that to interpret a different path. And I will say, like, I have not used it 100% of the time, 100% effectively. I have absolutely had weak moments. My wife and I fight from time to time still. That's not, like, we're humans. As I said, it's not just the like romantic situations. I talk about a work experience from a carrier that I'm not naming that I recently worked at. Um, this very much goes on in real life. How about negotiation? Like whether that's price negotiation or coverage negotiation or just like any kind of negotiation, that's ultimately about understanding what the person's position is, what's driving them, and whether you're a blocker or facilitator to that. And the more you're seen as a facilitator, the more likely you are to bring them to your way of thinking about it. So bringing this understanding has a lot of benefit. It's like I've been talking about this in sales communities because actually, if you can understand the other person's happiness and tap into that, you'll be in a much more effective place to move your message forward versus being that sales guy who just pushed on them.
Brian, I think there's so many parts of this book that I think are extremely important. I think it's just more than a traditional relationship book. I think it goes to relationships with coworkers, with family, with friends, and like you just said, which is important as well in your business life, trying to figure out how to establish proper relationships with people in your business dealings, whether you're selling to them or, trying to negotiate partnerships or whatever. So, what what an awesome message! I'm looking forward to helping you, uh, promote this particular book. And what no better way to spend the late evening than hanging out with you.
Yeah, you. Thanks for spending it with me. I always like spending time with you, Nick.
The book is The 50, 75, 100 Solution: Build Better Relationships. My guest this week has been my good friend, Bryan Falchuk. Bryan, thanks so much.
Awesome. It was really good to reconnect, Nick.